Afternoon. Well, I said I'd do a stream on alts today, because I covered Bitcoin and Ether in some detail yesterday. Just a couple of things on Bitcoin and Ether, before I move on to alts. Just things to be aware of for the rest of the day today, I guess. So Bitcoin as it stands could potentially create a 3-day demand. So this purple line, so if it closes above 94K. So just be conscious of that if you are looking for short entries, based on that monthly supply. That if it does, then it could bounce off that, then make a higher high, and then alternatively, if it then comes back down and flips the 3-day demand to supply, it will be a nice easy short. But obviously, while we don't necessarily long in supply now unless you're scalping, similarly, we don't really want to short if we do end up right above a 3-day demand. So that's just to be aware of there. Other than that, like we just had some real sideways movement yesterday, didn't hit any zones of interest on the upside or the downside. And similarly on indices, we just kind of went sideways. We had a bit more of an up move on them yesterday, and we had S&P push into more into the zone that I wanted to potentially look for shorts in. And the others, and as I've said before, like the confluence wasn't great on these in general. I've also had, I think, Aussie dollars now finally hit at least the alert, if not quite the zone that I wanted potentially to look for shorts. To be aware of though, today we're now in earnings season. So today we've got Microsoft and Meta earnings, which will be my time are going to be like 9 p.m. now. But yeah, obviously when New York closes, so those are the nighttime releases. Tomorrow we've got Apple, Amazon, and then MicroStrategy is also tomorrow. That's down here a bit lower on the market cap, but also yeah, tomorrow night we'll have MicroStrategy. So that'll be an interesting one because obviously they cause volatility in the indices, which then can in turn cause volatility in crypto and in Bitcoin. But also potentially like MicroStrategy, then it could give us some sort of indicator, because MicroStrategy and Bitcoin charts look very similar. And I'll have another look at that later, I think. But yeah, anyway, just be conscious of that. But today less so, but tomorrow particularly with the MicroStrategy earnings coming out. On the ETF side, so those big sells or now maybe transfers that we saw on Grayscale, I'm not seeing reflected in the data, in the aggregated data that I have from my other two sources. And I did try and find out, but I didn't look at Grayscale data, so I need to still look at Grayscale website as well to see if those are just not being reflected here. Again, I still just don't know the accuracy or which is the most accurate source. We obviously had that huge buy 2 days ago on BlackRock, and then a little bit more buying yesterday. So, but the others are still more selling. And then on the CVD data, we've got sort of aggregated spot CVD has been really dying whilst we're in this slight sideways / slight upward consolidation. And that's a bit more of a challenging one as well, because so you could argue that, if the CVD is dropping, that's aggressive sellers because they're on the maker side. But are they selling into limit orders on the buy side? If the price is still going sideways, then yes, you've got some selling going on, but somebody has to buy on the other side, and if the price is staying sideways, that must mean there's limit buys at this level. But then there's also an argument that in the uptrend, from a divergence perspective, if price is in an uptrend, if we still consider this sideways thing as sort of an uptrend, but overall it's in an uptrend for the last couple of weeks, that CVD is dropping, then you can argue that buyers are getting tired. So I'm a bit mixed on kind of what my thoughts are on that, and it's just been sort of going too long. So I mean, it seems like all it's going to take is some aggressive buyers to step in, and then price can get pushed up if it's holding even with this selling. But obviously, you need those buyers to step in, and given we're at resistance, it's hard to know if they are going to step in. And particularly, well, I mean, we have a little bit of space probably on the indices, and the indices, as I said yesterday, are all coming off, either close to or on annual demands. So. I'm more bullish on those. It's just a question of whether you're going to get some sort of a retest. Yeah. So anyway, the data's a little bit mixed there. On the walls side, my trading light appears to still be down, so I can't say what walls are on the exchanges like I normally do, unfortunately. I looked at Bybit and Binance on the liquidation side, and some obviously are above the immediate highs, and then around the 96K mark, and the same we see on Binance, 96 and a little bit higher. There's also a lot of liquidations there, so again, it's possible we go up to target those. But yeah, not much more to say than that. Other than that, everything still stands that I said yesterday, really, that I would like to see a little bit more of a push and a rejection to get that 3 hits to the high. If we get the rejection, obviously you're just looking for a reaction in those zones above. I did add a more aggressive entry on both Ether and on Bitcoin in that zone below that I talked about in the stream yesterday. That I didn't actually have the alert there, but I've said we're looking for, if it does come down into there, we are coming off monthly supply, so be careful, but. We're looking for a swing fail into there and then a reclaim of the range. And similarly with Ether, closing those gaps. Ether's a little bit relatively lower than Bitcoin. But yeah, we'd be looking for a bounce in that 4 hour zone if we're going to get an aggressive, if this is very bullish and that's a bullish up move that we've had, which it is supported by ETF buying. So I think it's worth considering that. I again still haven't added anything in this weekly zone. I'm still sticking with 82,500 and taking out those stops if we do drop. But again, we'll just see what happens if and when we ever get down there. And yeah, so other than that, not much new from yesterday. But be conscious of the what do you call it? The earnings coming in tomorrow. US dollar dominance. Come on, expand. Internet's being a little bit ropey today. So US dollar dominance now did make a daily demand by a hair, which is slightly awkward because Bitcoin also has a daily demand. But yeah, again, so I'm still hopefully expecting that push up. And again, if this does get a push up to here, then we're probably not going to get Bitcoin and Ether holding those sort of mid zones. I mean, this might have the same. Probably does have the same if I go to the lower time frames, like an hourly in here or something. Yeah, it's got that hourly there, but it's still finding resistance at the moment. But in this case, it's already tested once, twice. So the confluence isn't really there for that aggressive long on Bitcoin and Ether. But I guess we'll just see as and when the zones hit. Total. So the only thing in like sort of in the favor, I didn't cover the totals in the stream yesterday, but in favor of more up is the fact that total itself is just kind of floating in this 5 day supply and hasn't hit the weekly or the monthly up here like Bitcoin has, because obviously it's been pulled down to some extent by alts. So I guess in its favor, like perhaps this has space to move up, and if this does move up to here, then it's possible Bitcoin's going to take out all-time high. But then similarly, I guess you can look back at previous PA, and it doesn't necessarily have to go to a zone if it doesn't want to. Again, the reliability of using these total charts is sort of slightly dubious at times. But it did come off a decent level at the lows, does have some space above. So this isn't necessarily supporting we must short now. That's probably the key takeaway from that, rather than actually meaning anything in itself. Total 2 is a weekly 5 day supply here. So again, like I've said many times on the alts, like while we have had a decent up move and everybody's super excited, and it is coming off, while we went way deeper into these demands than I wanted to, it is a decent up move, and it did hold demand. That's what I was going to say. But we are still in this downtrend, so there is no reason this couldn't just drop again. So on alts, and that's consistent on total 2, total 3, and others. Total 3 is a little bit stronger because the majors have been a little bit stronger. Total 2 is dragged down a little bit by Ether being weaker, and others is the same. So again, it's pushed sort of through this local trend line. It's got another bigger trend line further up, but again, still holding this downtrend. But what we do have on most alts now, or a lot of alts now, is this 4 day demand. And in some cases we've got a weekly. So again, similar to what we had here, and obviously this move is stronger than the move we had here, but in the same manner as I was looking for, okay, we had this demand made, I was looking for the possibility of a bounce in there, which we didn't get. we're now again looking for the possibilities of bounces in here. So I have, and hopefully it won't be so aggressive that it's actually picking up that trend line again that it broke before. Um, Hopefully it won't be so aggressive, but at least some alts are going to come back to, ground zero and give proper retests, even if the others, like the stronger ones, maybe do just take off. Um, and I think total DeFi is pretty much looking the same. Yeah. So again, just rejecting that weekly supply in there. So if I show you the weekly chart, still in this weekly downtrend, still rejecting weekly supply, but now in this case doesn't have weekly demand, but does have a 4-day in there, and it's got this higher 3-day level. So some alts we are seeing like this picking up this higher level, and there's some weekly like these offset support slash demand zones that are getting picked up. Others are dipping back down here. But really, I mean, I had some alts that just ran through zones, and there were ones that were pretty obvious that they might. And in some cases, for example, I think Turbo, for example, was one of the ones that overran. And I had put a comment on the first short alert saying, there was a fair chance it was going to take trendline stops, and then obviously it did. So again, we're seeing a real mix of alts, but for the most part, I am still seeing, at least this consolidation in this area of resistance. So some are giving stronger rejections. You've got the odd thing that's crazy like ALPACA because it was a delisting pump. Um, but this has now got a daily supply in there. But at least, we are seeing some consolidation in these areas, so we should be able to make some judgment as to whether we're going to be short, or be whether they're going to give decent supply to short, or whether they're still, consolidating for a long for a next move up. So in this case, yes, it has daily supply, but it's still consolidating tightly enough for me to not think this is a definite short, similar on others here. But yeah, what I'm looking for is these retests down below. So, if alts come back down, this has got a daily, a 4-hour, 4-day, and then a daily here that was already tested. And that's the difficulty on alts. Is the other thing is I'll get to the majors in a minute. It's like where is going to be the best entry, because we do have a lot of chop on the way up, and in fact others looked a bit neater than quite a lot of them, but in many of the alts have up move daily demand, up move daily demand, and they've all been tested. So they're just like very slow up moves. So while, if you look at the higher time frames, they look like a strong move. They're actually, a lot of them are looking like this, which then gives rise to the possibility of taking all the stops. But then in there, maybe they've got a weekly demand or a 4-day demand. So it makes it a little bit challenging to know, should we just be longing this top one here or thinking we're going to still get another move? But that would be counter to what I would think, because, in most cases we're now in supply, or in the alts that have hit those supplies. Or do we wait for the deeper bounces? And then if that's the case, where? So again, I'm just setting, excuse me, that's my phone. Um, yeah, so if we're waiting for those deeper bounces, like where exactly should we look for entry? So that's the sort of challenge on the alt side at the moment. So that's general kind of on the alt market. So yeah, as I've said, just delete some of my mess. Yeah, I'm not looking for longs here. I'm looking for longs on retests. I've started to set some more aggressive alerts, mixed throughout these. I've said to the group, I'm kind of doing them quite quickly, but the preference on alts is going to be the ones that are coming from monthly demands or something to the left here, not ones that are broken all-time low. My preference is obviously still for shorts. If for those have broken all-time low and are retesting like this, then I'm still looking on the more on the short side. I'm less inclined to look for longs. Some I've just put more aggressive ones in just in case they are reversing. So yeah, we can only see as and when things hit, really. So ETHBTC also, obviously people keep calling as an indicator of of the alt market, but frankly, I don't really see it as a very good indicator anymore, because ETHBTC obviously has been in this massive downtrend for more than a year, 2 years was it? And we've had mini alt seasons in that time. But I guess everybody's waiting for the big one, the big alt season, the proper alt season, which obviously, as if you follow me, you'll know I've been highly skeptical of in general. Whether we're going to get another alt season like this. The rotation of capital, I think, is different. And yeah, so I don't know if we're going to get an extended all season like we've seen previously, where we get, everything going 10 times. We might get a handful of things going 10 times or some whole portion of the market. But the last couple of supposed all seasons we've had, we've seen a lot falling as well. Um, so yeah, ETHBTC still holdings, but still under supply, just a bit, it's come off this 2-day demand. So again, we just need to see if this is going to start pushing and if ETH is going to start pushing. On the majors, and again, I keep saying I'll do proper analysis on these, but I actually still really haven't. But I have set some alerts, so I'll just share the alerts. But again, like aggressively without really considering the analysis in great detail. So I'll just quickly run through these, just so you can see where the alerts have gone in, and then I need to judge, and these might change. So please be conscious of that. So um, I did have some more aggressive alerts that I think I've shared, sorry, that I put in but haven't shared since my last video. So for example, here, I think it was a daily supply on Litecoin. They did get down, they did get rejections in most cases, but in most cases not for very long. We had these tight consolidations. When was that? The last week, middle of last week, before pushing a bit higher. But at the time I did them, I think the market was moving quite slowly, and I was sort of thinking, well, yeah, maybe this would get a move down. Um, so here on Litecoin, we have made a weekly demand in here and a 4-day demand. So again, I've set a slightly more aggressive alert, just see what happens as and when it hits that area. Again, being conscious, still in this downtrend. This at least has got a bit of space to supply if it does come back and test this. So it can potentially, if it doesn't go up here first, bounce here for at least another move up to there. Is also coming off this 2-month demand. And we did take some stops down here, which was one of the things I was looking for previously. But again, you can look back to previous scenarios, or previous structures. When we've had bounces, we had a bounce over here. Again, didn't break this last down move, so it did come back for a lower low. Did have at least a daily demand in here, and it didn't do anything on the retest. So that's the risk we've got here. But then similarly here, when it does start reversing, it does come back to the first daily demand, consolidate sideways, and then we end up in the uptrend. So that's, I guess, what we're looking for here. If we have hit, proper zones that are now going to hold for more of an extended period, then we're looking for that, up move. This is the last down move, hasn't broken yet, but we're looking for something to come back into here, consolidate, for then potentially having a decent up move and or at least taking out these next levels. So yeah, that's more general, but that's sort of Litecoin specific. There's that weekly demand. Ripple's the same. Ripple, I had this alert for a while, and I did actually want to hit this hit sooner. I think there was a 4-day. No, maybe it wasn't Ripple, it was Sol. So there's now a 4-day and a weekly in there. So there's a weekly and 4-day demand. The 4-day demand has already been hit. And again, a little bit more of a challenging one. So we also, my alert went for this 3-day supply at the high, it has wicked off just below that level. So again, really just need to see, this was it on Ripple. I think I wanted a test on this 12-hour zone at the bottom, or 8-hour in fact, which again, we didn't get. So this is, like I said a minute ago, that is the challenge, that we've got a weekly in here, we've got a 4-day, it actually appears to be a 5-day in there too. Yeah, there's a 5-day a little bit underneath the cross. In this case, it's got a daily that was already tested, but then there's another 8-hour and another 8-hour down here. So there's other zones lower that haven't been tested. So it's a question of, how strong the market's going to be and how much it just wants to retrace, of this up move. If you want to be more sensible and conservative, you can, at least fib it. And yeah, this would be the 70% fib would be down on this 8-hour demand down here, assuming the top has already been put in. So again, we just need to see, and then I've talked previously about these lower entries. Should we still get a continued drop from here? But these are more the lower time frame possible entries here. And then if we get a run, we have swing failed the low or taken the stops of this low here. So it is possible we take the stops of that high. It is possible we go all the way up to there. But it's similarly challenging to many others. We are in weekly supply, we are in a 3-day supply. But now we've made a new weekly demand, then that gives us more confidence and more hope, but we still need to see that hold and to see an uptrend start again. BCH was, yeah, a difficult one actually. So I had an alert down here on 4 or 5 day demand, whatever that pink level is down there. Didn't get tested. It then made a 2 week demand. Unfortunately, I wasn't looking at it at the time, and this candle came back in and tested the 2 week demand. Similarly, it made a weekly just by a hair at the end of last week, and it's tested that, I think, yesterday or the day before. Um, but BCH, again, I have the bigger challenge that this is on 6 months demand, so I want to be bullish because of that. But we're in 3 months supply. Excuse me, my nose is getting very itchy. There's a light of cigarette as well. Mm. So yeah, so we've got the challenge of being between the big brown zone here, 6 months demand, and then the big 3 months supply. Didn't surprise me. So on the short side, I had these previous alerts, and this is unfortunately I'm charting this on Coinbase. So I think initially this wick went up and it didn't quite hit on Binance, and then we had a second wick. So I did sort of set the two alerts. I said we could, while I wanted to see the rejection on this 3 month zone, I said there was a fair chance we'd take out the stops above there. So we did on these more significant wicks, but I think the Binance and the perps charts hadn't hit as high on these wicks. So we have then come back to test more. And now potentially this also might make a 3 day demand in here. So if this makes a 3 day demand, I might be inclined on this to put a more aggressive long entry in, in the hope of getting up to this higher zone up here, in the hope also of this 6 month zone playing out over the big 3 month that's been put in. Um, but yeah, between a bit of a rock and a hard place on that. EOS, I haven't put um, it was obviously a slightly different structure to everything else. So it had a 2 week demand, did make a 2 week demand, but again, it's sort of slightly offset with multiple candles. So I'm again a bit in two minds about that. And obviously, EOS tends to be one of the weaker ones. It is coming off 3 months supply at the highs. So I'm still not convinced this isn't going to go down and take out the lows ultimately, but obviously can come back higher in the meantime. But anyway, the structure isn't as clear as some of the other ones. Again, may create a 3 day. So I'm going to have to look at the 3 day demands throughout all of this tomorrow. But this is more of an example of what I was saying when we made a daily demand, tested it, made another daily demand, tested it, made another daily demand. We're sort of hovering between daily demand and supply week on both sides, and it's kind of testing it. But it's possible it could run back through all these stops to go back lower. Um, and I had possible entries on this daily, and then I think there was a 4 day demand in here. So I had two alerts go. Both of them the first one got slightly front run, and then I made it slightly lower, and that also got slightly front run. But yeah, broadly correct on the long side there. But again, it's just been a fairly weak move off that level. So again, if we come up into here, I look for potentially the lower high and the short there, or that's obviously slightly risky, particularly now we've got this 2 week demand. Um, and then, yeah, really, I'm not looking for any longs in this area because all the zones have already been tested. So that's the old majors. New majors, then, so ADA, start there because we've got this. So again, this is on a 6 month demand. So overarchingly, obviously, is more bullish, although can come deeper in the zone if it wants to. But if we assume that this is the low and that it's bounced, then this has now made also a new weekly demand. So I have alerted that it's coming off weekly supply. So again, just between rock and hard place, we need to see how strong this reaction is and whether it's going to hold demand on the retest. This again probably is another example of one of the more challenging ones. So it's tighter, so it's not horrendous. There's no 5 day in this. There's a weekly and a 4 day right next to each other. There's a 3 day inside a little bit lower. But then I think the problem with this, oh, actually, no, there's not a good example, unfortunately. So here we have this daily down here. This has been tested on the immediate candle. But this is the challenge. Like some of the alts, as I've said, are exhibiting this similar structure, but they've got this kind of floating weekly where they haven't tested this daily below. So again, I'm not convinced in some cases that we might get a wick down into here and then reclaim the weekly before moving up. So just be a bit careful of that. And again, just obviously depends if we get a retracement on Bitcoin, how deep that goes. This has now obviously created a daily supply in there, so that's actually a possible short, although I'm just not looking at the lower time frames at this stage. And then further up, yeah, we have this 12 hour supply in there. Should it come and retest higher Again, big object, like I say, be conscious of this. It's on a 6 month demand, so can obviously run through and make a higher high if the market does go bullish in that direction. So that's ADA. BNB again is one I haven't put more entries on because so I did have a look at I haven't looked at all the BTC pairs, but I did have a look at the BNB BTC pair, and it had made and rejected a 3 month supply. So I then became markedly more bearish on this than I was previously, thinking this was just a consolidation. Um, Obviously, it can go through and take out the trend line. You know, Bitcoin had a massive pump, then that obviously this can still go up. And maybe just up less relatively than Bitcoin, and thus the BNB BTC pair still drops. But it made me more wary of what's my mouse of looking for mouse. Here we go. It made me more wary of looking for longs on this unless I really see a clean zone to look for a long on. So this has no weekly. It has made a 3 day here. Again, a few candles, pretty weak. But I haven't put in new long entries on that. So again, and then it's a bit counterintuitive on this. So while I don't like the BNB BTC pair, like again, just not forgetting this is coming off an annual supply, annual demand. But again, you know, and it's holding this annual level. Um, doesn't mean it can't come deeper down inside, and obviously it's got a long way to drop if it does want to drop from here. But at the moment, it is still holding. So just keeping an eye on this from both sides at the moment. And yeah, we'll just see if it gives a decent entry. That's great. If it doesn't, I will just leave it alone because I think there's better things to trade. Link. Link again, you know, obviously. So all of these four were on the more bullish side. Somehow they ended up on the same layout. So 6 month demand on this, and also it had an annual higher. So in like it's similar to BNB, like it had this. It was a very weak annual in this case. It only closed very slightly above there, but it did try and hold that as support for a level back here earlier this year, and then came down deeper inside and has come deep into the 6 month zone as well, and then down all the way to the monthly at the bottom of there. So again, want to be bullish on this from a very high time frame perspective, but again, still in that local downtrend. So again, I had a more aggressive short on this on a daily supply in here, which only gave a really tiny reaction. And at the moment, I don't appear to have an alert on that actually. So let me see. So this did make a 2 week demand in there. Not the best one. So there's a 4 day and a 3 day. And then yeah, I think this was one of the ones again I was in two minds, as I just said with ADA, you know, that it hasn't quite, you know, it did the wick came down into the wick of the previous daily zone. Um, but hasn't properly tested that daily zone. So again, I was a bit in two minds as to whether I think this is going to go deeper down in here or whether it's going to hold higher. But I think I might just move this alert up so at least we've got that early alert on this, and then just see. So 4 day demand in there. Can't type. So yeah, just see what reaction we get as we come into this area. So that's link, and then similarly, I've got alert just above at 61 fib, just above taking out those stops there. So yeah, that's link. I think that's all of the. Oh no, Dogecoin. Dogecoin. So Dogecoin again coming off annual demand. You know, it didn't have the had a little bit of a bounce off the initial level and then came down deeper into the 2 month inside. And then even then, you know, it's still again obviously can go a lot deeper if it wants. It's got a weekly level a bit lower and then some more, so it can travel lower still if it wants to. Um, this is at least a little bit of a better structure, but again, still hasn't broken that downtrend. It's come very close. But because of the annual demand on this, I had no aggressive shorts. It's now made a weekly demand, I think, there. Yeah, so it's made a weekly, so it's still in weekly supply, but it's made a new weekly demand. So I have alerted that weekly demand, and then hopefully it won't just bounce higher. But again, just yeah, see the reaction if it comes down into there, and then failing some of these more aggressive entries, it does also have an 8 hour down at the base here, which could get a bounce lower if it wants to come down lower inside that and retrace more of that up move. And again, you know, if you don't want to be so aggressive, it really just depends where the market is. Again, 70 fib is kind of perfect. So, you know, maybe some of these 70 fibs are what we should be waiting for, but some of the stronger ones are going to bounce here. I mean, really, it's going to come down to like where the market's at, what Bitcoin's doing at the point, that these hit. If Bitcoin is wanting to go deeper, then these are going to go deeper. If Bitcoin is wanting to go back into that 3 month zone, below 72K, then all of these are going to break down further. So, but that doesn't mean we're even if that does happen, it doesn't mean we're not going to get bounces in the interim. Maybe we get a bounce here and it can't break supply, or maybe it just comes up to that 12 hour and then comes back down into. So, these are the swings that I like to trade. So I like to have some more aggressive entries and some less aggressive entries. And then finally, Dot, Solana, Atom, and Nia. So I'll start with Atom because obviously it still causes me physical pain. Um, I did set a couple of alerts on this, so I kind of remembered that I was short biased here, and I had this short bias. So while I wanted the stops to get taken and to go up into here, I was short biased because we were in 3 month supply. Um, and this actually has been one of the weaker ones. So it's got a weekly supply in there. It's got a larger weekly supply coming from over here, I believe. Let me just look at the weekly. Yeah, so it's got a larger weekly supply here, which I haven't got coloured in at the moment. And it's come off the 2 weekly at the high. It made a new weekly supply here. So again, I was hoping it would give more of a drop. But again, the timing wasn't great for this hitting. So it came up a bit higher in the zone, but is still holding this weekly zone. But again, I was just being more aggressive on shorts on this purely based on that 3 month supply in there. And the fact that, I do just think Atom, like, I don't know, I'm just not convinced it's going to hold there. I still would like it to come lower now. And various overarching things, coming off annual supply at the high here, and 6 month supply. And it has arguably it's played that out because it's broken the low. Um, but yeah, I'm still remaining short bias until I see a little bit more from this. Being on the 3 monthly level. Let me show you that 3 monthly quickly. So yeah, commonly, we see this, 3 months and you get this close and then the immediate test, and I do expect it to take out that low, um, which then will be down here and potentially going down into the lower demands. Um, Again, like I said a minute ago, though, it's hard to know what it's going to do in the interim. Like it could still go higher in the 3 month if it wanted before dropping. It does have untested monthly up there, and then obviously there's 5 day, weekly, etc., leading up to that area. Um, Dot. So of the rest of these, I think like actually Dot and Near, both like neither of them and Atom, like, neither of them created a new weekly demand. But they do have 4 days and 3 days and things like that. But again, like so, Dot very very close to the 3 month supply there hasn't quite hit my alert. I think I had an alert here for daily or 2 day, and again just got a small reaction down to 3 day demand before another push. It's made a new daily supply now, maybe isn't going to quite hit my alert there, but I kind of wanted another little push on this now, and maybe it'll get a bounce here. But again, I just think there's better things to look for longs on than something like this, even though it's clean daily demand, so you can look here if you want, but coming out of weekly supply again, still maintaining for now, maintaining that downtrend. Could have throw another trend line in there. No, that actually has broken through that trend line there. Um, but yeah, so potentially on this again, still just in the interest of having some aggressive and some less aggressive. This is one of the ones I'm going less aggressive on. I do really would want to look at the BTC pairs on these. Near similar, like again, bit cleaner, but again, still not broken supply. Near at least is coming off a 3 month demand at these lows. So my confidence on this is higher than on Dot. So again, on this, I have gone for the possible higher low. So again, 4 day demand in there. It's not a weekly like many other things, but um, seeing the reaction now on this 3 weekly supply. It's come up obviously a little bit higher inside it. It does have a bit of a gap up there, but would like to see the reaction when it gets down here. Hopefully won't get front run on that daily. So yeah, again, as you can see, that it's challenging knowing which zone to kind of put the possible entry on, to avoid not being too aggressive and not missing out by being too conservative. So that's that, and then finally Sol. Um, so Sol, yeah, so Sol was the one that I thought was Ripple that I had this more. So I had a 3 day demand alert here, but I really wanted it to hit back here, and unfortunately it took off before. So I kind of left it in there for now, and I left it in also because now it's got a weekly demand in there as well. So it's got a weekly level at the same level as this 3-day. My real concern with Sol is that we're again in 3-month supply, so it's just hit there. As per all the others, it's got a number of zones above that haven't been tested. So can run higher if it wants to inside it. It's coming off a monthly demand at the lows, one that I wanted from all the way back here that we just didn't get tested until much more recently. But yeah, so again, like similar to Atom, I'm just wary of looking for longs on this because we're hitting 3-month supply. I was looking for a swing fail of this high, just into the level, and obviously it stayed up there a little bit longer than that, and has gone and taken out the stops from above here, but not reaching up to the next level there. There's another level here, and there's also potential equal highs above there, which I probably commented on in the comment on the alert. So again, just sort of like this general area if we do get another push. So yeah, so you've got that aggressive long here, given it's made a new weekly demand and it's got the 3-day demand in there. But again, all these levels have been tested, so I'm just not sure if it's going to come down deeper. There's another daily there, and then there's another daily untested at the bottom. So again, there's a number of zones that it could test through here if it wants to. So just need to see the zones as and when they hit. Let me just do a quick fib on this for the moment and see where that's at right now. So again, the 61 would be just a little bit inside this daily zone below, and then maybe this daily down here is a little bit too conservative. But yeah, it's possible this is a bit too aggressive, and that I should be looking at this daily zone below. But yeah, we shall see. Or even here, maybe it's just going to bounce off the top here. So it's entirely up to you if you want to take these trades. Obviously, I just put the alerts as to areas I see as of interest if price visits them, but if price doesn't have to visit them. So, if you're desperate to buy Sol because you don't care about 3 months supply, it's coming off monthly demand, and you think Sol is the future, then sure, by all means, you can look for an aggressive entry on here. Just keep your stop underneath the daily demand and look for that next move up, or, to a new all-time high if you're super bullish on Sol. So yeah, don't forget my alerts just simply mean they are areas that I'm interested in trading if price gets back there. It doesn't mean it has to. Um, we saw that frankly all the way down. There were many like the zone here. All these zones up here were zones I would have wanted retests on that didn't get hit, and then obviously finally I had to put an aggressive short here because just to finally get into that bigger down move. So yeah, it could be a similar scenario when you go. You're looking at the up move. Should I be looking just for a much more aggressive long to be able to jump back into that up move? Excuse me, I'm not picking nose. My nose is just super itchy today. Mm. I think it's also because I have a fan on. I think when you have the fan on, it maybe sprays Thailand dust around the room that my nose is not familiar with. Yeah. So anyway, that's all the majors. On the alt alerts. So yeah, as I've said earlier, like I've been trying to pick things that I quite like the look of. So yesterday I put broccoli, F3B, and Vine in the channel just to keep an eye on, and then Vine I had an aggressive entry on this 12-hour demand. Was on this larger breakout of the triangle, so you can keep an eye on this. It's now made a new 8-hour demand, may make another 12-hour in there later today. I think of that 3-day, I've got a feeling. So it also could make a 3-day if this confirms by the end of the day. So um, you can keep an eye on that for a continuation of this possible breakout of the triangle. Broccoli was just something I commented on. It had come through a 5-day demand. I just said watch out for possible swing failure into this 4-hour demand below. So that's obviously starting off a nice move now. And then I think when I was looking at broccoli, I then checked all the other broccolis and alerted. This is broccoli itself, and then alerted broccoli F2B. I think that's F2B. F2B as well. So those alerts have hit today. But yeah, as I say, so I mean, I'm still getting alerts hitting in both directions, and they're still, for the most part, I think they're performing reasonably well. I mean, some are pushing higher in the zones. Obviously, some, as I said before, are breaking the zones uh, if the structure. So again, just showing. So we have this trend line downward structure. I mean, here this may not have quite hit the zone, but it's sort of coming into zones that I want, and then it's coming back, and now I'm looking, are we going to get a long entry? So I'm trying to again get these swings. Yeah, I think not much more to comment on than that. I'm not going to go through my whole alt list. So now I'm on section 5. Um, and yeah, oh God, ALPACA. Got to look at ALPACA just for amusement value, 473%. Yeah, so ALPACA's just gotten really, really crazy. So this seems to be happening. So this is something to be aware of that when things are delisted on Binance, so Binance announces the delisting, you get this initial. So this was like here. You get this initial sort of pump and dump thing going on. So I can't even show properly, with these candles, this sort of pump and dump scenario. And then things are just going crazy. And this is, this is obviously exit pumps, and I think they're really dying thereafter. But we had the same on AERGO. But then AERGO actually, well, I think everybody announced they were delisting it, and then for some reason, then Mexi and I think others have that now relisted it. So I'm not sure what happened there. But yeah, like, and I don't know if they're all doing this, like these massive moves. I think there was, oh, what's it called? The other one, Audio, is it? Or Auction, like one of the others. I think that was a similar, like Binance announced the delisting, it dumped, and then it pumped massively. Um, and yeah, I don't know if they've all done that because I think, let's see, I think Wing, I'm on section 1 and down section 4. Uh, yeah, so Wing, for example. This is a 2-hour chart. So again, yeah, so Wing hasn't had the massive pump, but maybe it will. I don't know. So I mean, keep an eye on these because I don't know if they also have delayed pump and dumps. But again, I'm not sure. I can't remember exactly what point in time. It's probably only a few days ago. So maybe this was the drop and then it retraced and then it's come back down again. But that volatility and some of these really massive moves are the ones that are being delisted by Binance. FIB I can see is up 35% today. So again, this had the dump and then it came back and now then it dumped again and now it's come back again. So be very, very careful trading these because you don't want to get trapped in if everybody is delisting it. Um, but that's certainly what's happening with these crazy things like ALPACA. So just be be very careful about trading out. So 400%. So obviously, unfortunately, I just missed my long alert. So I had a long alert on this on that daily demand, but it came down into a 12-hour or 8-hour actually, I think. So it held this 8-hour um, before this ridiculous move today that we've had. And I don't know, maybe it's going to continue. So I'll probably now set alert here and alert here because once they do die, then you get some real significant deaths. So I guess let's look at, and I think I said the same with the AERGO. Um, yeah, so again, just took out all-time high, and I think I said the same on that alert. No, I think I just put a comment in the chat. I put that it's all-time high, but then I also said, I made a comment that is it going to go the same way as auction? Um, and then similarly, but again, you want to try and get in, so if you missed that massive move down initially, then it came back up, came back up, came back up. It looked like it wasn't going to make it up to this entry that I had up here, but then it made a 12-hour supply in there. So again, I just put an aggressive short in for that. So and that's also obviously had a decent, also 50% down since that alert. Let me see on auction where that is at now, and it's happened a while ago. So again, ridiculous, ridiculous random pumps. And again, I had an alert go here. I think for all-time high, but it didn't quite hit it. And again, was just commenting in the channel. It would have been very hard to get into, and initially I hadn't realised at this point because this was a while ago. That these were sort of exit pumps from delisted coins. So obviously I had a long alert on there and it just came straight through that. And even now, not holding zone I had there. So again, I just put another aggressive short entry. It made a 3-day supply in there. So I put an aggressive short entry on that. And again, it's just got a good decent reaction. It was a risky one because it was very close to proper demand, but also looking like it's going to make 2 months supply, which I've already got drawn in there. Oh yeah, that's the only thing I haven't really covered in this at all as yet. Is that obviously it's the 30th of April today, so we might get some fuckery for end of month. So just again, be a little bit careful today, and also quite commonly in the first week of the next month. I think people have commented that we get more buying on Bitcoin, but I think I tried to validate that at one point and just couldn't validate it at all. So I'm a little more skeptical about that theory myself. But yeah, I think I'd need to go back and actually look at the data and see whether the first week of the month really does normally give a pump or a dump. But I tend to find that's when I go back and validate anything anybody said on those subjects, I tend to find they're completely and utterly wrong, and I have no idea where they've got their data from. So anyway, I had a request for wrong chart. I had a request for INIT, which I know I had a couple of not great alerts on. Okay, please load. Yeah, so this was this one might work out. So again, this was just a challenging one. I think so. Back right when it opened, I said it was like very risky. So unfortunately, I was just a little bit too early here. So I said, this is a risky 30-minute supply alert. So I put through that in just to see it to give a bit of a reaction on the low time frame there, but then came and took out the highs. Then I had a possible long entry. I think it was a daily demand or maybe an 8-hour demand or something in there. I think it might have been too new for a daily at that stage. Let me have a look. No, it did have a daily there. May or may not have been confirmed by the time I put the entry in. Oh, you know what? I think I had an entry on the 2-hour demand down here, and the wick didn't quite get down there, and it had made a daily by that time. So it did run again, but then obviously dumped straight back through. Then it had made a 3-day supply here, and it's still very new. That was a week 3-day supply, so I threw in an alert just to see if it was going to get a reaction straight off the level. And obviously, this is still a valid short because it had to go above the high. But then I put a follow-up alert for yesterday, just saying 12-hour supply. So yeah, to whoever requested this, I mean, it's very very hard to say. So these things are very new and they could go either way. But my bias went from sort of just sideways and messing around in here to down because we had, this made a weekly supply as well as that 3-day. But again, it's not a strong weekly. Didn't close significantly below. So we just need to see how this week closes, like from a high time frame perspective. Um, I don't know if there's history on this from Dex Screener or something like that. That's the other thing. I haven't looked back to see, where this is coming from, if this really is a brand new coin just listed on Binance. But I mean, this is just messy at the moment. So it's just trading zones as they're hit. This has come up into 12-hour supply, so we need to see this come back down and where it's going to land. Um, Looking like it's going to create a 4-hour supply above, or it's got 2 hours till the close, but we'll see. Um, but yeah, at the moment, my bias would be down on this, but very, very tentatively. It's very new, and really, it's not. I say down, but it's actually on the lower time frames, you can actually see it's in sort of an uptrend, but it's down from the perspective of it closed below a made weekly supply and 3-day supply. Um, so, but for scalping, like these have good volatility, so by all means scalp. There's actually quite a nice 2-hour in there if you want to scalp an aggressive long on that. It's already tested this first one there. So you can see when you start drawing these zones, that really you can just trade. Like you don't have to be. I think people get very nervous, and even I do. And I get nervous. I think more when I'm doing these videos because I don't want to wreck people by giving like very firm analysis and being like how other um, YouTubers are very definitive and they're going, this will go up, it's going to go up 10. I saw, for example, a news article yesterday saying something like, oh, why doggy is going to go to $1,000. And to be fair, I didn't read it. Maybe he had very valid reasons, but I also just think it's utterly absurd. Um, but then similarly, I can't make yes, this has no resistance. So if this does go up, of course it can go up to, $10, $20 if it wants. But unless you really know the fundamentals of it and you think it really has reason, you've looked into, the supply and whether it's a viable price rise, so that's up to you. But at the moment, it's just far too early to really say. I've seen charts like this go up. Look at Layer, for example. And I've seen charts like this, end up going to sort of zero or going down 95% first. And the thing I think you always need to be careful of when you're getting new coins is they do quite often go down 95% first. I think, it is not without of the realms of possibility that this, even if this is a great coin, so that would be 57% down there. Um, so keep going, that's 80%. So it's not without the realms of possibility that this is going to go down to 10 cents before it goes up. So just don't get too excited and just trade zones as and when they're put in with your stop. And I think, what's good about the new coins is you get the volatility, and it's good that they don't have supply and sellers battering them down for the most part, unless again you've got to research and see whether they've got unlockings and things like that. But then they also don't have strong demand. So unless the influencers get on this and there's people promoting it and it's got that backing, then there's no reason for it to particularly go up. And the 95% down before it does go up is very, very common. But yeah, I mean, it's got a 2 hour demand in here, a 2 hour demand in here. So by all means, try and scalp longs off those. For me, I'm just sort of, when I have these and when I'm putting the alerts, I tend to stick to the higher time frames, like it's a 12-hour supply here. I think that's more of a reasonable short. And if you took that short, I would say, yeah, hold it and see where it goes. Because if it does do the 95%, it could be a very nice trade. But you just have to be super conscious of what new supply and demand is being created on the way. So actually, yeah, so the risk on this one is that there is potentially a 3-day demand in there today. If we get a close above there, and it's kind of a choppy one, but so if we get a close above here today, then I would say, and if this can hang out here, then I would say, yeah, 100% look for a long in this area tomorrow. But if this comes down in here tomorrow, then I'd be more wary of it. But it really is just seeing, the zones as and when they're created. And I'll show you layer because, layer I was aggressively looking for shorts and then eventually broke higher. You could look back with hindsight and go, well, I really should have looked for longs as well. But also, it was a hard one that the structure, I think when I did eventually kind of go, yeah, I'm looking for longs, it then didn't come back for them. But, it gave some very nice shorts in the interim. So again, you've got this very new coin and new price action. And again, let's see, this dropped 61% before actually then starting to move up. So yeah, I've got the short entry there. I think there was something on the lower time frame over here. Then got the short entry on the retest, but it still made a higher low. And I think at this point I did have an entry. I believe I was looking for longs if we came back down here, but it front ran me. Then also here, possibility I've seen enough coins break will try and break all to the all-time high, or these wicks from the start and then die from there. So I was certainly happy to be looking for aggressive shorts in here. And again, like they all I think worked on the lower time frame. But then eventually it held and broke up higher. And then I think I did move. Obviously, I moved my long entry from down here further up, and it just hasn't come back since then. And you can see, so there was a 2-day demand in there. It's a 4-day and then a 2-day in here. It did actually test on the daily, but these coins you have to be like really on top of. I think I was saying the other day, I don't know whether this is going to end up being a CAS or an OM. So OM supposedly had the devs selling. So obviously it's had a lot more history before the up move. Went from 2021, I had 3 years of down first. So again, yeah, that's when you're looking at these new coins, you're looking in that mid-lap section. You've got to remember that's what you're looking at. So yes, sure, it might look very bullish for the first 3 weeks, a month that it's out, but then in this case, down 98% over 3 years before it's come back. This is about approaching annual demand, but you've got to be very careful. And this is, that's what I was saying, just layer kind of reminds me of this, are we in this sort of scenario where we're suddenly going to fall off a cliff like that? So I think it's very nice to look for shorts on that basis. But, these tend to have something dramatic happen to them. So obviously had, I can't remember, I think the dev sold or something like that, or supposedly. So there's that. And then in contrast, let's look at CAS. The CAS was another one again that was causing me pain because it did. Once it started going up, it just kept going up. But again, still had the drop. Again, 75% from 26th September to 20th of October. So it had a month of 60-70% drop before then up only for a good 2-3 year period, and then finally it rolls over at the top here. So I don't know whether you really need to know the fundamentals to know about this. Like, I really know nothing about CAS. Obviously, I didn't even start charting it till around here. Maybe that's when it was listed on futures. I'm not sure, or I just didn't know about it. But did finally get a really nice long entry there, and then a lot of long entries, aggressive long entries, sort of towards the end, unfortunately, in the kind of distribution phase, and then starting to get the shorts in. But this, as I say, these are the trades that I really enjoy. You can trade both directions and all the swings, so it's pretty nice. And Yeah, kind of just also slightly front run. This is actually one of the things that's of interest as well. So my other concern when I look at a lot of alts is while some, like so all the majors that we looked at, for example, are in 6-month monthly demands, they're in very large zones and they can bounce anywhere in that zone, but that doesn't mean they can't go lower in the zone. I also have a number of things like this, and it's difficult because that wick, maybe it's coming off the top of these wicks here, or even the top of the wick a little bit lower. So obviously I draw my demand from the body downwards. So yes, it's possible it's front run it. But then some of them I'm also looking at thinking, well, they could still come back lower. Some are not. This is very close, but I have some, they're maybe here. So it's much more significantly, there's still a significant gap to demand. But again, all the alts are acting very differently. So it is again entirely possible that the alts are gonna that some of them are gonna form higher lows here, and others are gonna keep going up. Sorry, that didn't make any sense actually. So it's entirely possible that some are going to form higher lows, so that we're going to get some like this that maybe comes down here and keeps going up, or maybe it comes down here and keeps going up, but others are going to go for the lower low before going up. Lower lows or rather than higher low. And it's going to be very dependent on the individual structures. So this has got a 2-month supply that I've got alerted a little bit above. It's just missed that off the wick. So again, in a situation where it's just missed it, maybe we're going to get a bounce here. It's going to go up, take out the high, and then 2-month means we should take out this low, and then maybe we come back into that demand down there. And it's just, again, that's why you need to trade each zone as and when they hit. And then you just work out the probability or what you think the probability is. So as I always said, supply and demand, like it's very easy to draw zones. Anyone can draw a zone. But then to try and work out which zone is good and which is bad, which is strong, and which is weak is hard. But also in many cases you can just trade the zone. If it doesn't work, it doesn't work. But if so long as you trade in a zone, stick to trading in a zone, then you should make money. Part of it is taking profit, but you should be able to at least, like most zones, except in some rare exceptions, when you get these very aggressive moves, most zones are going to get some sort of a reaction. So, for example, even here, even if you blindly, shorted this weekly, I think it got me there, but this weekly level, and then price had run through it, you say if you just short it purely on the weekly, you short there, your stop's up here, you'll take profits down here. So, in this case, you have got a big green candle that's run through it, but at least in this case, you could have got out of break even, but you are seeing some sort of a reaction. Like occasionally it will run through and you're going to get stopped out. I'm not saying it's perfect. And as I've said, there's always pros and cons and you've got to consider. So for example, on this chart, I would consider that we have this 5-day up here. It hasn't quite been tested. There's a 2-month that hasn't quite been tested. So maybe it isn't that viable to have a short on this weekly level. But if you can't see that, or if you're not sure about that kind of thing, then you trade this, you put your stop there, and you'll get out of break even if it doesn't do anything. If you don't see the reaction that you want to see, or you wait. You kind of go, okay, like now. Okay, it's come up into my weekly zone of interest. It's come pretty high in it, but it's come into this 3-day inside the weekly. Oh, look, it's made a daily supply. So then you get a tighter entry. Again, it's higher probability. It's a daily inside a weekly. You had your entry there, your stop's now above the daily or even still above the weekly if you're uncertain about it. So yeah, it's really not, so long as you keep rigid in your system, the supply and demand system should make you money. And so long as you don't trade, also the other thing is don't trade too many things in the same direction. So obviously this week we've had a big up move on alt, so you wouldn't want to be shorting everything at 15 things a day. Take 1 or 2 shorts. So when things hit zones, maybe wait. I always say wait till a few hit. So if I'm getting a whole bunch of shorts hitting, I say often wait for the second wave. So I'll get a wave of alerts coming in saying short this, or this is hit supply, this is hit supply, this is hit supply. But then the early ones, then the rest of the market's going to catch up. So the early ones tend to have more time consolidating, therefore more likely to either push higher into the zone or maybe go to the zone above, while the others are catching up. And then when a significant amount of the market is at supply, then the whole market will come down. Yeah, and that same should apply really as these things are dropping now. So, if we have a significant amount of the market in this area at the same time, then we're more likely to get this holding. If this, for example, hits very early and others aren't here yet and others are still traveling down, then you may kind of go, okay, I'm not going to take this one. I'll wait for the lower zone on this one. Or you'll wait for a more aggressive on this one if others have hit first. So again, it's making those judgments across the market. Let me see if I had any other requests in the channel before I try and wrap this up. Nothing really significant. Yeah, so I'm going to probably wrap this up now. I'm debating on going to another class at the gym before I wrap up my day, and I have to walk down to the supermarket. I'll try and do another stream tomorrow on maybe the rest of those alts. And the other thing I really want to do, I'm really going to have to do over the next few days, is go through all the entire list again, looking at the 2-month and monthly closes and see if anything's made significant 2-month or monthly demand. You can see here it's just green, red, like the market's all over the place, which is great because it means we can, like I said, trade both directions. So, yeah, so maybe I'll see what kind of comes up from what I look at over the rest of the day and tomorrow, and see if there's any sort of more across the board comments that I feel like I need to make. Any other? I'm trying to think now. It's 5:20. I'm probably not going to make this class, so maybe I can just do one or two more before I finish this video and upload it. Damn, this itchy nose is driving me crazy as well. Which OSCAS, that was the layout I was just on, wasn't it? Oh, that was it. I was going to look at. So, SUI that I've been asked about. So SUI, someone was asking me yesterday if they should short this, and I said, well, I actually haven't had a short alert on this, so this is one of the more bullish charts. We had 3 months demand down here, and posted this in the channel. We had initial bounce off the more aggressive of the 2-week above it. Then we came into the 3-month. Then we got a nice retest on the daily there, and then I have had another entry, which obviously hasn't come back and tested, so it made a new. Actually, I think this is a weekly demand, but it looks like it's probably going to end up a 3-weekly demand as well. Well, it's got another week till that closes, or the rest of this week, but it's like an alert just above the high here. But potentially, if you're looking for a retest in that level, in that area, if it comes back down, it is in a possible short area now. So similar to FARTCOIN, it's like it's not an area I'd short, but it's an area I start being wary of looking for longs. Was kind of my comments on that. Maybe you could short this 3-day or the weekly a little bit higher if it gets another push. And by all means, like look for shorts if you actually get a flip of some supply through here. But I think it's really being wise now about what you pick for your shorts and longs. Something like SUI has come off this 3-month demand. That's not as good a short as something like, I don't know, I'm not going to be able to find one now. Maybe Swarms. Yeah, this is not the best example either, but similar to this, like ignore, I'm just trying to put my hand on the screen, but obviously you can't see my hand, but let's say you have a chart that looks like this, which many of them do, where it's a broken support and an all-time low, that would obviously be a better short than looking at something like SUI, which is coming off a 3-month demand. So there was that, there was ONDO was one of the other ones that I was asked about previously that I'd done some updates on. ONDO was not as bullish as SUI. But again, it is in this larger 3-month. It's come deep inside it. It's gone to a monthly inside it. And yeah, so again, this is one of the ones I've been more conservative on the entry. It has made a weekly demand in here. And again, coming off 5-day supply there, has made a weekly demand in here. But just big gap on this one down to that daily in there, so I just wasn't convinced this was one of the ones that might go lower. So, and as I said, in the interest of having some more aggressive and some less aggressive, for this one I've gone less aggressive on the possible long entry, retest of that monthly level, daily demand down here that hasn't been tested, this sort of more floating little weekly demand in the middle there. Up to you if you want to look for longs there. And then potential shorts higher, but this is yeah, less strong. So obviously, so he's had a much stronger bounce off that level. And then ENS was the third one that I think Ash in the group asked me for these three. Oh, ENA. I keep getting mixed up between ENA and ENS. Ash asked me for these three, and ENA was the one I was more bearish on, and actually put in a short entry on that basis because this had made a 3-month supply. So it's a weak 3-month supply. Because it didn't close, it just closed just below the level, didn't close below this low of the wick or even the secondary wick here. But again, I said, if the whole market goes up, this will probably go up, but it's something. So again, I'm more biased on the bearish side. So this is a good example. I'd be more inclined to, if I'm going to look for shorts across the market, I'd be more inclined to look for a short on ENA coming off 3-month supply than on SUIs, which may not go as far, may not drop as far. So you always got to make those judgments. So anyway, yeah, this I had aggressive short entry on the 3-month level there, and again, it's had a decent reaction down. Is now testing this 4-day demand. So again, we're starting to see some of these tests come in. So we need to see now, is this going to get another move up? I haven't reset this alert on this daily in there, but I think I was considering either in 2 minds of this daily because of the trend line stops again on this. But yeah, so even though this has hit 4-day demand, I'm still not inclined to look for longs on this anyway. That's kind of the upshot of that comment there. Might as well look at FARTCOIN while I'm here. So FARTCOIN's still doing this sort of slow grind up and hasn't come back down for a decent retest for me yet. Let's see, I think, yeah, so this is on the cusp of maybe creating a new 3-day demand up here. So this was, I'd said this before, that, this was my initial alert went here for possible 3-day, and it wasn't supposed to be for a short. It was more, like I said before, just to try and be aware of your longs, and this is not a place to start longing on FARTCOIN. I've seen many people continue to long on this, and, and I saw somebody even comment, what's to say FARTCOIN isn't going to go like this? Yeah, they could be 100% right. What I was comparing it to, just move my alert. What I was comparing it to previously were things like, SHIB and BONK. And I think they're quite variable. I think so. If you look at it like this, it looks quite bullish. If you look at it on the log scale, it looks much less nice. But at least it's a measured up move. But I would still want a retest. It'd be nice 61 fib down here now. I still like a decent retest to get an entry. But if you look at something like SHIB, yeah, so okay, so just before I move on to SHIB, the short version of this, if it does make a 3-day demand, if it closes strongly and makes a 3-day demand, then maybe you can look for aggressive long on there. It still hasn't tested this 3-day demand below, and then still hasn't tested this weekly below. So again, could still come all the way back down if it wants to. Just on SHIB quickly, just to show. So again, don't forget, SHIB's a very, very different structure, really. But the SHIB had this massive move at the start, but then really getting on the linear scale, it looks horrendous. Like, and it took a good couple of years to then get back to kind of near where it started. So FARTCOIN's obviously significantly quicker than that. If you look on the log, it actually looks all pretty bad on the log. But we get even here. We had the secondary pump on SHIB, and it's come back down, and then it's come back, but it hasn't made a higher high at this point. So it's actually not dissimilar to what the sort of price action we're getting on FARTCOIN going up here. So be interesting to see. But yeah, so that's why I say I'm not, not inclined to take longs on FARTCOIN at this point in time. And BONK's another. If you look on the log scale, it looks much more nice than it did on the linear scale. So BONK is another one. It did. So you can use this argument for FARTCOIN. This did come back and take out the all-time high for the first time, and then again, what's that? The end of the year, it came back again and took out the all-time high again. But again, until but the structure was quite different. So I mean, while FARTCOIN, the supply is distributed, this came down a lot faster below this 3 day, and then went straight back up through it when it did want to run again. But this is a much shorter period of time, so it's had much less time. So then neither of these are that similar to FARTCOIN, but it's just kind of looking at what meme coins did, what they do. Um, when they try and make their second run. And it probably is again really just dependent on what the market's doing at any given time. So look at what PEPE did. Um, so PEPE depends again where we look at it at. So the initial, if we compare this to FARTCOIN, this is actually very, very similar to FARTCOIN, really, because it's got this same choppy but slow drop. Again, the time is a bit. FARTCOIN's had a lot longer consolidation in here because it's got weekly demand, whereas PEPE obviously came up a lot faster. But again, didn't make a higher high. Just wicked around here, went sideways for for a month or so, and then dropped. Um, and then later pump. So in this case, it did drop, and then it did come back and strongly took out all-time high. Um, But then similarly, once it's had the secondary pump again, lower high, lower low. So yeah, I mean, you can't like, so that's why I don't like to make these judgments on really whether something's going to make an all-time high or not. It's like if there's a supply there that we can short, great. If there's a demand there that we can long, great. I think yeah, people get very much get FOMO on, they're going to miss that 10 times. But I think, and I hear some people say, oh, they bought for FARTCOIN, at 1 cent or whatever at the bottom. And like I'd love to say that's um, like congratulations to them. Obviously, like I'd love to say that that's is that skill, but or are they buying 100 different things at 1 cent, and it just happens to be Fartcoin's the one that's hit, and maybe that makes up their whole portfolio. I don't know. But for me to try and judge which one, look at the entire market. So if I look at the this whole watch list that I have, blue list is everything. So we've got compare IRFC, so a few things down. So we've got a whole bunch of stuff that's 10 to 20% down today. Um, then we've got ALPACA, which has gone crazy, and then a bunch more stuff that's up 10 to 20, so probably about double the amount, two or three times the amount of stuff that's up 10 to 20%, or 10 to 40% today. It's got BSW actually. I think that hit a short. Yeah, that hit a short alert, so it gives again a bit of a reaction, but now it's come back and again higher in the zone doesn't necessarily mean so again still invalid, still in 2 week supply. So I've got to wait for the reactions and wait for the low time frame structure when the zones are hit if they can go higher in the zone. Um, but yes, I mean but to judge that today or this period BSW is going to be the one to move is very hard. So for me, I'd much rather take smaller trades, just try and take, like even Vine, um, try and get those tight entries on things that are still low in the hope that you get that one. But, who knows? Maybe this will never run. Maybe it's going to go sideways for another 3 weeks and then it's going to run. It's very hard to judge. So if you're good at that, then and feel when you want to give me some advice on how to be better at that, then feel free. I think back in the day we used to use a lot of volume indicator, volume monitors and things like that. But all the ones I used to have are now dead. But even then, like I found it hard because invariably you would kind of go, it's like when Rose calls something, it's like you look at it, it's already moved 100%. It's like, so people are very great at kind of going, oh, look, alpaca's up 230%. I'm gonna scalp this. Like I saw people scalping, actually always want something to look at is XMR. Um, and you can scalp, but I mean, I can pretty much guarantee that nobody got in down here, and if they did, they were really guessing. Um, and unless there happens to be a support here, but there will be people who buy all-time lows, or people who bought here will say, and they'll show that their trade, or they bought 86, and I kind of look at the chart and I think, well, congratulations to you, but you really were guessing at this point. We're really still in a downtrend. And if you're lucky enough to get that, but did you also buy here? Did you also buy here? Did you also buy here? Um, and for me, like each of those little trades that you take 2 or 3 R on is better than just waiting for that one and getting stopped out every time rather than taking profit. And yes, it's frustrating if you take 2 or 3 R and exit here and this thing goes 10 R, 20 R. Um, but I think you'll make much more money in the long run. XMR, that was, I know Zach XPT put out something about some fuckery on XMR and um, a hack maybe. I actually need to probably investigate that, but obviously this came up in a monthly supply, so I've talked about this and charted this previously. That I was bullish on this, like I really did want to test down here, so I think when I did my X's to Z's on the watch list, I had this aggressive short in there, so that worked quite nicely, but didn't just came back down to this support level, and then I haven't looked at it since then, and it's now just taken off and had these two significant wicks. So I wouldn't mind trying to get in a short entry on this, but it is quite bullish, so it's a bit of a risky one. So I want to wait for proper structure and proper consolidation because it could be one of the ones that's just going to go and try and take out the highs. See, I've got another alert all the way up the top there. Um, but yeah, possibly on a swing failure of this level or up, where I've got this alert, I'll start looking at this again and seeing if it can give quite a nice short. Um, it took out stops here, but has left triple bottom there and also has this 6 month, 3 month zone, sorry, that hasn't been tested below. And if this is now a 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 4, 5, then we could get the correction of the whole thing. Get rid of that a sec. So if we fib that whole thing, yeah, so that's potentially would come quite nicely. So this is one of the other things I do sometimes is I kind of go, where's the 61 fib? This is the log scale. So the linear scale would be the 70. So that's very nice. And then the log scale, the 60 is a little bit behind. But if I go, okay, if we go up to here, 400, then the 61 lines up quite nicely. So I use some of these sort of like, I don't know what you call it, like reverse fibbing, um, to try and estimate where tops are. I've had this work very unsuccessfully on Bitcoin, so I wouldn't recommend doing it on Bitcoin particularly. There was only one thing actually which I can show you quickly that I liked on Bitcoin that used to work for a while, but I haven't used it for a while, so I don't know if it still works. But yeah, anyway, so I kind of go, if we topped here, where would the 61 fib be? And that would be quite a nice level from a log scale perspective, and then the 78 from a linear scale perspective. If this is the top now, it's good from the linear perspective. So the 70 being at the zone that I would look to long. 61's a little bit lower, so I think maybe this could get another run. It's not a fine art and it doesn't always work, but that's something you can do to try and project where tops are. But certainly, like for example, if you were trying to short this here and the 61's all the way down there, you kind of go, this is probably not going to be the top. And maybe it's going to give you a scalp or whatever, but it's probably not going to be the ultimate top because things do tend to line up in the long run. The thing that was good on Bitcoin for a while, I will end with this. This has been an hour and 20 minutes stream. I'll end with this, presuming my chart actually loads. Come on. Yeah, okay, so what you could do is if Bitcoin was being aggressive, okay, if Bitcoin was being aggressive and not retesting, so for example here, I think so. If you fibbed from like the bottom of here, let's get down to the time frame again. So if you were fibbing this move up and the price didn't come back to test 61 or 70 area, and in this case it's probably just above the 50, but I won't put it on there. Sorry, just below the 50. What's the mouse again? Oh wow. What you would then find is that if you wanted to project the next top, you would then find that this level would line up with the 70% for the next top. So let's say I did it without knowing what was to the left, the right here. So then I would extend this fib out. So I go, okay, let's front run the 61 to 70. And I would extend this out and I would go, if we had a top at the 70, if the 70 was the retracement, where would the top be? So this is probably not going to work out that well. Well, it's actually not horrendous. So it did have a little bit of a reaction there, but that putting that low at the 70 fib, um, for some reason that worked quite nicely. But again, it wasn't always, and it was only in certain scenarios. So I didn't use it loads, and it was I think it was when we were in quite the bear market. Actually, possibly the other thing is whether I should have done that probably on the linear scale, because I prefer fibs on the linear scale on. But yeah, it's still broadly in the same place anyway. So this is not ideal, but that was kind of the theory that if you had an an aggressive bounce, and I think I also only tried it on the way up, but if you had an aggressive bounce on the way up, such that it didn't come and retest the 61 to 70 fib area, then you could project the next top using the bottom, the early bottom, and putting that in the golden fib area. Um, I mean, really, like when I think about the logic of it, actually, it might have been better to put it at the zone it should have bounced on. Mm. Anyway, I won't go into that into detail now, but that was the theory anyway. But it's just like using fibs. So you can use fibs on the waves that are already there, but also don't forget that you can use fibs before they happen. So for example, like yeah, that was the comment for XMR. It's like if you go, okay, this is the low, this is currently the high. If the top is put in, where is the 61 fib? So is the 61 fib in an area that I would look for long? So in the case of Bitcoin, yes, it is. Oh no, actually my 100's gone off the wrong spot. So yeah, 61 is because it's right at that cross, which is where I would be looking at taking out those lows. If you were kind of going, oh, is the top in like a few days ago, or even say last Tuesday, and it was down here, then you might kind of go, okay, look, well, the 61 is really not anywhere. Like I would look for longs a bit higher, so I think maybe this can go a bit higher. But you just look at confluence of where previous zones are. Um, and I tend to find, obviously, because Bitcoin it can overextend, so maybe it's better to kind of say, okay, well, the 70 fib will be on there. So actually, in fact, this crosses are probably a better judge, because that would be where the 70 fib is, and that puts the 61 at the top of the 30, uh, at the top of the 3-day level. Anyway, I hope that makes sense. I've gone over that really fast, but anyway, I'm running longer than I wanted to on this stream, but I cover quite a lot of alts, so I hope that is useful, and maybe I'll come back and do the alerts tomorrow. But yeah, I really want to spend a good couple of days now, like running through, like updating all the 2-month, 1 month and 2-month zones. And also because I'm just still, for some reason I'm still getting heaps of alerts hitting, but I still have no alerts left. So I think because I reset them as as fast as they hit. But I also feel like probably I've got some that are far too far away. So I need to go through and just clean everything up. And there's 700 alts on the list still. And I think Mexi released a whole load more as well. So I want to try and kind of clean everything up over the next couple of days. So we'll see if I get to a stream or not. But yeah, as always, please like and subscribe if you're interested and you want to see more content. Any requests, you can put them on the YouTube comments, or please join my Telegram channel. The links are all in the description. And have a good evening.